Hello.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Board. We've got a slightly abridged version today, so just be 15 minutes. I'm Gavin Coughlin, Agile Coach here at Boost, and I'm joined by...
Paul Floyling, also an Agile Coach here at Boost. Unfortunately, Kirsten couldn't join us this afternoon, but we'll carry on without her, and regardless.
Yep. Today we're going to cover just a couple of topics. We're going to talk about a blog post that we read during the week, which we thought was pretty interesting, by Roman Pichler, and it's about the difference between a minimum viable product and a minimum marketable product. And Paul, you're also going to be talking about your experiences up in Auckland.
Yeah, sure. I went at the weekend. I went up to a conference. It's called KitCon, CIT, but pronounced Kit, and it's the Continuous Integration and Testing Conference. It's a very cool conference. Lots of agile people. So I'll let you know the details a bit later.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this blog post by Roman Pichler. Here at Boost, we try to, I suppose, educate our clients about the minimum viable product and what they really need to get out there. And there's a bit of confusion around that, and also the MMP, minimum marketable product. So we thought we'd just go over that today and hopefully clear it up for anybody who has any questions about it. And if you do have any comments, let us know.
So yeah, I mean, minimum viable product is something that I've heard bandied around quite a lot. And we used that as an expression, and it was quite interesting to, well, because minimum marketable product makes complete sense. But yeah, I'm looking forward to your explanation of this, Gav.
Okay, well, I suppose a minimum viable product is something that you want to get out there as quickly as possible with the least amount of effort as possible, so therefore as cheaply as possible as well, to test certain features. And it's really a time when you can experiment and try things out and see what's going to work and what's not going to work.
Yeah.
And you can do a few rounds of that, and it's a really good way, really quick way of testing out your ideas and seeing if they're actually working before you put too much time and effort into them, because you don't want to spend a lot of time and a lot of money on a full featured product that isn't actually wanted by the end user. So you might as well experiment a little bit and see what works.
So you're trying to reduce your risk as quickly as possible by working out whether you have a product which people want to use.
Exactly.
And also reducing your risk by making sure the technology you want to use might be something you've never tried before, and you want to make sure it works in the situation that you want to use it.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a really, like you said, it's a really great way of reducing risk.
Yeah.
That's by not wasting time and testing things as soon as possible. So I'm going to draw out just a little graphic that'll show you how a minimum viable product works, at least how one way it can work. So, as with all products and all features, you're going to start off with your idea. That's what an idea looks like, by the way. If you haven't seen an idea before, that's exactly what it looks like. And then you're going to start getting into the build and the actual coding itself. And once you have that done, you should have your minimum viable product. And at that point, you're going to be able to get that out there and have people actually use it. And a minimum viable product can take really whatever format you want. It can be code, it can be even paper prototypes, whatever you feel you can get out there and start testing as early as possible. And testing with the right sort of users as well is pretty important. And let's see. So once you get that out, you're going to be able to measure its success with people. And that's going to give you hopefully some usable data. And that should give you enough information to know what's working and what's not working, really.
Yeah.
And from this, it's a full circle. And you're going to learn from that data you got from measuring the minimum viable product with end users, and just come back in, feed that back into the idea, whether you want to enhance it or throw it away or come up with a complete new one or just pivot the original idea. And you keep on doing this until you feel you have the features that are actually going to work for you. And I suppose that's sort of where we come into the minimum marketable product.
Yeah.
And that is the minimum product that you'd actually like to put out there for sale and for users to actually, use out there in the marketplace. So in the blog post, the example that they use is the iPhone. They did, of course, lots of testing with the iPhone and tested out thousands of features, but the version of the iPhone that they put out in 2007 was the minimum marketable product, and there's lots of features that they chose not to have in there.
That's right.
So they didn't have things like, copy and pasting, and there's just lots of stuff.
There was no app store, for example.
No app store,
yeah, that kind of thing. So it was just a fixed feature set, which of course they improved as you could get software updates and so on. But just testing a concept essentially.
Yeah, and like you said earlier to me, a lot of people jailbreak their phone.
Yeah.
And added little things to their phone like that, but rather than try to put out as many features as humanly possible, because when you're trying to when you're building some software, there is that temptation to just throw everything at it and have all the features and all the bells and whistles. That's not what users want. Users want to get certain jobs done, and they want that to be easy to use and a joy to use.
Yeah, and then people jailbreaking their phone, what a great way for Apple to learn that they needed an app store. I mean, I'm sure they had an app store in the pipeline the whole time.
Yes. Yeah.
But the fact is, as soon as people started doing that and adding new features to the phone with little programs they could download from an open source kind of area, market kind of measured, you've learned an Apple, off they go and make an app store. So yeah, it's a really good way to prove your concept and get good feedback from the market.
Yeah. And while a minimum viable product and a minimum marketable product are slightly different beasts, or very different beasts, really, they really work together, because you want to go through all these ideas with the minimum viable product until you have a set of features that you're pretty comfortable with, you're pretty sure are going to actually be used. And actually, one thing that says in the blog post is that you don't want to try and please everybody with your product. You just want to, cater for a small group of people.
Sure.
Because if you try to cater for everybody, you're going to end up catering for nobody. If you cater for a small group, you'll actually end up pleasing people outside that group as well.
Yeah.
So once you're testing things with your MVP, eventually you're going to have a good idea of what you want to release in your MMP, and that's how those things really work together.
That's right. And we were talking because often what happens is you have a set of personas, and with those personas you associate key user stories at the beginning, and you organize your releases by the key personas that you want to release functionality or features for first. And so those could be your MMP, if you like. Your top tier persona could be your MMP. That's your biggest market, if you like, or the market that you want to test. And like you said, the key is to keep focused on the absolute minimum that you need to release for that minimum marketable product. This information, by the way, is all and I believe the diagram you were drawing is from the Lean Startup. Is that right?
Yeah, Eric Ries is a Lean Startup.
Yeah. Which is a great book, and we've got multiple copies of it around the office. And often when people come and talk to us, we will point them to this book if they want an app built, or they want they're looking at a concept or an idea. Then we'll point them in the direction of this book to give them a good idea of how they should start. Yeah.
And it's like people who are artists who paint a picture will tell you it's always difficult to decide when the picture is actually finished. And it's the same with a product. It's hard to know when that's actually done and actually finished. And creating and testing MVPs is something that helps you to know what's going to be your finished product that you put out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the blog post about MVP and MMP. And Paul, we're going to talk a little bit about your trip up to Auckland to KickCon.
Sure. So KickCon stands for Continuous Integration and Testing. It's a one-day conference. It happens all over the world in different locations, and they kind of this year it was in Auckland. A few years ago it was in Wellington. Sometimes the Australia and New Zealand sort of KickCon moves around different locations between Australia and New Zealand. I think this year they voted up for the next one to be in Queenstown, which would be great.
Oh, I'll go to that one. I like Queenstown.
Great location. But anyway, KickCon is a group of people who getting together. It's an open space conference. So the night before, actually, we got together and decided which topics we wanted to talk about, and those topics were put up on the board. So each session was allocated the night before, and the next day we got in, started the first session 9 o'clock. Each session's an hour long. It's done in an open space format, so there is someone leading the conversation, but it's a conversation and a discussion between a group of peers who want to find out more or discuss their findings or their learnings in a particular aspect of continuous integration and testing. It was really good. Really, I mean, some really interesting topics and a bunch of like-minded people as far as I was concerned.
You said you were surprised by the fact that everybody there seemed to be working in an agile environment.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it, of course, but and the reason is that continuous integration and testing is a big part of what we do in the agile space, because we need both of those things to. It's how we move fast. If we're continually integrating little chunks of work, and making sure that we're not going down this kind of traditional approach or the waterfall approach of doing all of the integration at the end of the project, because often that's the death march or the of the project right there. The integration takes so long, the project goes belly up and fails. And so the agile way is to integrate as often as possible, 2 or 3 times a day even.
Yeah.
And the developers will be checking their code in, making sure it works with the other pieces of code, not going for the big bang approach essentially.
Yeah.
And so it in retrospect, of course, a continuous integration conference is going to be a bunch of agilists getting together to discuss.
Yeah, I suppose so. And apart from continuous integration, what were some of the big things that people were talking about?
Well, a range of things. My favourite topic was the managing software technical debt. I really enjoyed that. The technical debt is, for you guys who don't know, a technical debt is the sort of debt that you accumulate in doing things not quite right in your software as you're developing a program. So it's things that you, for one reason or another, you've made trade-off decisions. You've got to get something out quick. You've been asked to fix this as soon as possible, and so you do the quick fix, and you know that quick fix, although it's solved the immediate problem, has probably left a trail of smaller problems in its wake, and at some point you're going to have to go back and tidy those up, and we call that technical debt. It's essentially technical debt rears its head in a very key metric, which is the cost of change, and so the more technical debt you have, the higher the cost of change of your software. Because when a programmer goes in or a developer goes in to make some new feature changes, for example, they're adding some enhancements or something like that, or they're adding a new feature, they'll often end up having to fix a number of other problems first before they can actually start to develop the new code. And the number of other problems they've got to fix before they can actually start to build additional or new enhancements is what we would call maintenance. And the longer a developer spends in maintenance, the less new feature work they can do.
And what were, if any, do people have a solution for abolishing, or not abolishing, but stopping technical debt from occurring?
Yeah, well, not from occurring is like, you have to accept there's always going to be technical debt.
Yeah, I suppose that's the wrong way.
And so there is definitely ways of developing software and that will minimise or help you, minimise technical debt over another method of building software. And of course, those things are like test-driven development and so on, continuous integration. They're all part of that cycle because they help you locate and TDD helps you reduce the complexity of your code quite significantly because it's a way of designing software. And the way you design that software means that you're breaking down your functions into less complex pieces. So from the get-go, you're making your design, if you like, simpler in terms of its structure, and by reducing complexity, you're increasing the reliability of that software. Okay. There's a famous software engineer called Dijkstra, who back in the last century said simplicity is the key to reliability. Anyway, so there's ways of managing technical debt from the get-go, if you like. But then there's also ways of managing technical debt from, once you've delivered your software or you in retrospect you need to go up and mop technical debt if you're going to successfully maintain and build on that piece of software that you've just released. And so the key ways that the group that I was with discussed were visualizing.
So making
it visible
to everybody in the company.
Because a lot of the problem is that software developers know all too well the size of their technical debt, because they are in the code every day and experience it firsthand. Most software developers I personally felt like I was wading through treacle when I was trying to fix code that was and so that I could just make another enhancement or make another change.
Well, I noticed one thing that you've done on a project that you're a Scrum Master on is that you have the entire infrastructure written out very clearly on a whiteboard.
Yeah, and square boxes.
Yeah, and I've seen post-its on that. So can you explain what that's doing and how it works? So
that came about because we had a retrospective with this team, and they highlighted to the product owner that they had some significant technical debt that would need to be addressed soon, and but the product owner had no visibility and no understanding of that. Not being a technical person or not being overly technical, they had no real concept of the level of technical debt, and because they're not in the code, they don't see that technical debt on a daily basis. So the team decided to make it visible, and so they created a system architecture, like you say, with square boxes representing the different parts of their system, and then when they have a smell of code or a smell of something not quite right, they put a post-it note on. They use yellow post-it notes for smells, bad smells. They'll use other post-it notes to describe where they've had production outages and that they put the post-it note. It's a red post-it note on the area that had the production outage, and or caused the production outage and that kind of thing. And they're constantly annotating and adding new post-it notes and creating a heat map of in different parts of the system, i.e. as they start to accumulate bugs or things they've had to fix or bad smells, if they can see a trend happening in one part of the system, then the product owner knows that some investigation needs to be done, and they can write a user story to go and fix the technical debt.
It's a pretty useful way of just making everybody aware of what's going on and that it's actually important and needs to be attended to.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, well, thanks for that.
No problem. So lots of great other talks to be part of at the KitCon. Yeah. And so if you guys are interested, it's online. Just look up KitCon, CITCON. All of the sessions have been written up and put on their wiki. So if you want to access their wiki, you can see a brief write-ups of the sessions that I attended, and everybody attended.
Cool. Okay, well, that's like I said, we're having a shorter episode of The Board today. So that's it from us. Thank you.
See you next time.